Welcome! Today, we're diving into Daphne du Maurier's Rebecca, and this is more than just a book review. It's a look at a really profound emotional journey. It teaches us something huge, that true liberation, and maybe even true love, only really starts when we get the courage to tear down the myths we've been worshiping.
This line. Last night, I dreamt I went to Manderley again. It's one of the most famous opening lines in all of literature for a reason. Right away, it just pulls you into this haunting dreamscape, a world where the past isn't just history, it's this massive psychological wall that you have to break through to be free.
All right, so let's step inside. We're entering the haunting world of Manderley, a place totally defined by a ghost. We're going to uncover its powerful and honestly deeply romantic message about what it really means to find yourself.
Okay, so here are the basics. The book is, of course, Rebecca, by Daphne du Maurier, published way back in 1938, and its genre is Gothic psychological thriller. Now that sounds like a mouthful, but what it really means is you get this spooky, atmospheric setting, big imposing mansions, dark secrets, combined with this really intense dive deep inside the main character's head. It's a story for anyone out there who's ever felt overshadowed by someone else. So what's the big idea here? It's this: real freedom, real liberation comes when you finally realize that those pedestals we put people on, a lot of the time, they're built on lies. The book is basically telling us that your own authentic self, flaws and all, has way more power than some fake, polished idea of perfection you might be chasing.
So let's talk about this shadow of a perfect ghost. This is all about the crushing weight of trying to live up to an impossible ideal. We're going to explore exactly how our narrator, who, by the way, is never even named, gets completely trapped by the myth of the perfect first wife. And du Maurier does this so well, you can literally feel that weight on every single page.
This quote here is just so wise. It's a warning, really, about how we idealize things, especially first love. Calling it a fever and a burden, that's powerful. It's like she's saying that intense, perfect memory can become its own kind of ghost, an impossible standard that stops you from ever really growing or loving again.
And this is how the myth gets built, brick by perfect brick. Listen to that list: beauty, charm, intelligence, the most powerful personality. It's just a laundry list of perfection. But the brilliant twist is that we find out all of it. That charm, that power, it was all a calculated performance. It wasn't real.
And that brings us to a crucial point. Performance is not power. Authenticity is. The whole novel is pushing us to look past that intimidating, flawless mask and ask, okay, what's real strength? And the answer isn't perfection, it's truth. Okay, get ready, because now we're at the turning point, the truth that shatters all the myths. This is the confession that changes literally everything. It's the moment the whole story pivots.
The entire book, all that tension, all that dread, it all comes down to this one single shattering question. But what if the ideal was a lie? What if the ghost you've been terrified of, the one you've been comparing yourself to, what if she was never real to begin with?
And then this, Maxime's confession. I hated her. Just like that, with those few words, the entire myth of the perfect Rebecca, the perfect marriage, is just obliterated. It's this incredibly painful moment of truth, but it's also the key that finally unlocks the door to our narrator's prison. So now we get to the liberation, finding strength in the ruins of a lie. Once the truth is out, the narrator's transformation, well, it isn't immediate, but it is so profound. She goes from being paralyzed by fear to a position of real strength. And the key is she doesn't do it by becoming another Rebecca. She does it by finally becoming herself. This is where the whole book pivots from a ghost story to a story of becoming.
I love this quote because it just captures her evolution so perfectly. It shows us that real confidence doesn't come from copying someone else. It comes from going through your own fires and learning to stand in your own truth. She's not just a replacement wife anymore. She is finally the main character of her own story.
And believe it or not, this book actually gives us a kind of toolkit for our own liberation. Step 1, the reality check. Start questioning that apparent perfection you see in other people. Step 2, the authenticity audit. Just notice when you're performing versus when you're being genuine. And step 3, the myth-busting exercise. Try to humanize the people you put on pedestals. It's amazing how this applies to our lives today, right? Especially with social media.
So let's talk about the legacy here. Why does this story, written over 85 years ago, still matter so much?
What's the final verdict on this masterpiece?
Okay, let's be real. On the one hand, the strengths are huge. The psychological tension is just masterful, the plot twist is brilliant, and the pacing is exceptional. On the other hand, yeah, the narrator's passivity at the beginning can be a little frustrating for us modern readers. But you could argue that's what makes her final transformation so incredibly powerful. And you just can't deny the book's incredible tension and that game-changing twist.
All right, let's look at how we broke down the score. We gave content quality an 8.5 because the core message about identity is just timeless. Practical applicability gets a 7.0. I mean, its lessons are super relevant, even if we're not living in giant English manners. The writing clarity gets a huge 9.0. Du Maurier's prose is just incredible. And impact potential is another 9.0 because this book stays with you. Research quality is a bit lower, but that's less relevant for a novel like this.
And all that brings us to our final grade, a 7.9 out of 10. Look, Rebecca is a sophisticated, psychologically rich masterpiece. It is absolutely worth your time. There's a reason we still call it a classic.
So if this whole idea of psychological prisons and shattering the myth of the perfect woman really got to you, I've got two more for you. First, the classic short story, The Yellow Wallpaper. It takes that theme of female psychological imprisonment and just dials it up. And for a modern take, you have to check out Gone Girl. It also completely deconstructs that perfect wife myth, but with a really cynical modern twist.
So, what's the one thing you should take away from all this? If there's one lesson to learn from the ashes of Manderley, it's this. Choose your authentic, vulnerable self over any manufactured, perfect performance. Real strength isn't about being flawless, it's about being real. Your freedom doesn't come from competing with ghosts. It comes from finding the courage to embrace your own imperfect, but totally authentic self. Hey, if you enjoyed taking this trip to Manderley with us, please make sure you follow and subscribe. We've got another deep dive into a life-changing book coming up, and you are not going to want to miss it.